The wind howled across the endless Wyoming plains, carrying the scent of dust and despair, as Elias Hawthorne stood on the sagging porch of his ramshackle ranch, staring at a horizon that had long stopped promising anything but loneliness. His hands, calloused and cracked from years of wrestling barbed wire and stubborn cattle, clutched a crumpled letter, its ink smudged by the weight of his hopes. At 42, Elias was a man hollowed out by time, his heart a barren field where dreams had withered under the relentless sun. He'd ordered a bride, a stranger named Clara, from a catalog of women willing to marry men too broken or too remote to court in the usual ways. He'd imagined a gentle soul, a virgin heart to share his quiet world, but the woman who stepped off the stagecoach that bitter October evening was no savior. Her name was Clara, yes, but her eyes glinted with secrets, sharp as the blade of a black widow, and her voice, low, haunting, like a melody from a forgotten life, shattered the silence he'd built to protect himself. Elias didn't know it yet, but this woman, this enigma wrapped in a tattered shawl, would unravel his past, challenge his solitude, and force him to confront the ghosts he'd buried deep in the Wyoming earth. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected love, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more stories that touch the soul. Elias had always been a man of few words, his life carved out of necessity rather than ambition. The ranch, a sprawling patchwork of scrubland and rickety fences, had been his father's pride, but after the old man's death, it became Elias's burden. His days were a rhythm of labor, mending gates, herding cattle, fighting off coyotes, and his nights were a void, filled only by the creak of the house and the weight of his own thoughts. He'd once dreamed of a family, of laughter echoing through the rooms, but time and tragedy had stolen that vision. His younger sister, Mary, had died in a fever when he was 20, and his mother followed soon after, her heart too frail to carry the grief. His father lasted longer, but the bottle claimed him, leaving Elias alone at 30, with nothing but the ranch and a heart too heavy to hope. The loneliness wasn't just an absence, it was a presence, a shadow that sat at his table, slept in his bed, and whispered in the wind. When he saw the advertisement for mail-order brides in a tattered newspaper, it felt like a lifeline, a chance to fill the silence with something other than sorrow. He wrote the letter with trembling hands, describing himself as a hard-working man seeking a kind woman to share a simple life. He didn't mention the ache in his chest or the way the stars seemed dimmer each night. Clara's arrival was a jolt, like lightning splitting a dead tree. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 25, with raven hair that spilled like ink over her shoulders and eyes that seemed to see through him, past the weathered lines of his face to the boy he'd once been. Her dress was plain, but there was something regal in her posture, a defiance that didn't match the demure description in her letter. She spoke little as he drove the wagon back to the ranch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, but when she did, her voice was a low, velvet hum that stirred something in Elias he couldn't name. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a disturbance, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. That night, as they sat across from each other at the scarred kitchen table, she ate in silence, her gaze darting to the corners of the room as if searching for something, or someone. Elias tried to make conversation, asking about her journey, but her answers were clipped, her smile a fleeting thing that didn't reach her eyes. He wondered if he'd made a mistake, if this woman was too wild, too unknowable, for a man like him. The days that followed were a dance of unease. Clara was no homemaker, she burned the bread, left dishes unwashed, and seemed more interested in wandering the ranch's edges than tending to its chores. Yet there was something magnetic about her, something that kept Elias watching. She'd stand by the corral at dusk, singing softly to the horses, her voice weaving through the air like a spell, calming even the most skittish mare. He'd catch himself lingering nearby, pretending to check the fences, just to hear her. It was a voice that carried pain, a voice that had known loss, and it reached into the hollow places in his heart, stirring memories he'd tried to forget, Mary's laughter, his mother's lullabies, the life he'd once imagined. But there were moments that chilled him, too. He'd find her staring at the horizon, her expression hard, as if she were waiting for something to emerge from the dust. Once, he caught her slipping a small, sharp knife into her boot, her movements quick and practiced, and when she saw him watching, she smiled that fleeting smile and said nothing. Suspicion grew like a weed in Elias's mind. The letters they'd exchanged had painted Clara as a shy, devout woman from a small Ohio town, eager for a quiet life. But this Clara was different, cunning, guarded, her past a locked door she refused to open. He began to notice inconsistencies. She claimed to have never ridden a horse, yet she handled the reins with ease. She spoke of a childhood in Ohio, but her accent carried a faint southern lilt, like something from the bayous. One night, unable to sleep, Elias rifled through her trunk while she was out walking the fields, a habit she'd taken to under the guise of needing air. Inside, he found a photograph of a man, young and handsome, with a bullet hole torn through the image. There was a letter, too, addressed to someone named Lila, not Clara, its words cryptic but laced with urgency, "They'll come for me. Don't trust the preacher." His heart pounded as he shoved the items back, the pieces of her mystery refusing to fit together. Was she running from something? Someone? And why had she chosen his ranch, his life, to hide in? The tension between them built like a storm. Elias wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but her voice, God, that voice, kept him tethered. She'd sing in the evenings, old hymns or strange, mournful ballads, and he'd sit on the porch, his pipe forgotten in his hand, letting the sound wash over him. It was as if she were singing to the broken parts of him, the parts he'd buried with his family. One night, emboldened by whiskey, he asked her outright who she was. She looked at him, her eyes like dark pools, and said, "I'm the woman you sent for, Elias." Isn't that enough? But it wasn't, and they both knew it. The next morning, he found her saddlebags packed, as if she'd sensed his doubts and was ready to flee. He didn't ask her to stay, not with words, but he stood in her path, his silence a plea, and she stayed. Something shifted then, a fragile truce born of unspoken need. Winter descended, harsh and unrelenting, blanketing the ranch in snow. The isolation forced them closer, their days spent tending the livestock together, their nights by the fire, where Clara's voice became a bridge between them. She began to share fragments of herself, not the truth, not yet, but stories of a childhood marked by loss, of a mother who sang to her before disappearing into the night, of a life spent running from shadows she wouldn't name. Elias listened, his own walls crumbling, and he told her things he'd never spoken aloud, the guilt he carried for Mary's death, the way he'd failed to save his mother, the loneliness that had become his only companion. Her eyes softened then, and for the first time, he saw not the Black Widow but a woman as broken as he was, her sharpness a shield against a world that had hurt her. The turning point came in late December, when a stranger rode onto the ranch. He was a lean man with cold eyes and a badge pinned to his coat, claiming to be a marshal searching for a woman named Lila Moreau, wanted for murder in Louisiana. Elias's blood ran cold as he glanced at Clara, who stood frozen by the barn, her face a mask of fear. The marshal's description matched her: raven hair, haunting voice, a scar on her left wrist Elias had noticed but never questioned. He should have turned her over, should have protected himself, but something in her eyes, a plea, a spark of the woman who'd sung his heart back to life, stopped him. He lied to the marshal, said no such woman lived there, and sent him away. That night, Clara told him everything. Her real name was Lila, she'd killed a man in self-defense, a preacher who'd tried to claim her body and soul, and she'd been running ever since. The photograph was her brother, dead by the same man's hand. She'd come to Elias's ranch not to marry, but to hide, never expecting to find a man whose silence matched her own. The confession broke something open between them. Elias didn't forgive her lies, he couldn't, not entirely, but he understood her fear, her need to survive. They spent the winter rebuilding, not just the ranch but themselves, learning to trust in small, tentative steps. Clara stayed, her voice filling the house with warmth, her hands learning the work of the ranch. Elias found himself laughing again, a sound so foreign it startled him. When spring came, the marshal returned, this time with proof of Lila's identity. Elias stood by her, his rifle in hand, not to fight but to show he wouldn't let her go without a struggle. The marshal, sensing the bond between them, left with a warning but no arrest. Clara, Lila, chose to stay, not as a fugitive but as a woman claiming a new life. By summer, the ranch was no longer a prison but a home. Elias and Lila worked side by side, their hands brushing as they mended fences, their evenings filled with her songs and his quiet smiles. The loneliness that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a love neither had expected, forged in truth and second chances. They weren't perfect, her past still haunted her, and his scars ran deep, but they were enough for each other, two broken souls who'd found a way to mend. If this story of redemption, love, and the courage to face the past touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that even the loneliest roads can lead to hope. Subscribe to Gentle Hearts for more stories that remind us of the beauty in second chances. Before we part, please leave a comment below sharing what this story meant to you or how it inspired you. Your words mean the world to us at Gentle Hearts.